Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
My name is Stein, and today I want to talk to you about how to get your priority right as a leader. As a small business owner, I think a lot of times we forget to appreciate what it's like to be in small business. You've got to balance the needs of your staff, you've got to balance the needs of your customers, and then you've also got to take a look at the needs of yourself. And I think quite often we don't get appreciated as much as we should be. But more importantly, I think there's some things that we need to be aware of as small business owners. And it kind of brings me back to my son. A number of years ago, I had been really busy. I'd traveled all over the place, and I realized that I wanted to spend some time with Luca. At the time, he was 9, and they had a school excursion. I was very excited because the school excursion was to actually go into an Aboriginal sacred site. Now, this resonated with me even more because my background actually has a little bit of the Native American spiritual philosophy into it. My great-grandmother was a full-blooded Cherokee medicine woman. She actually married outside the tribe, and in the Cherokee way, she was banished. And unfortunately, I never learned any of the Cherokee heritage. But I was fortunate enough to be trained by somebody in the Apache tradition. And I'll never forget, I was actually in the bush getting ready to go in, and the Aboriginal elder said, "You need to actually get ready. We've got the men's business and the women's business." And they asked for all of the boys to line up in front of the men or the fathers, and all of the girls on the school excursion to line up behind the mothers. And as I was kneeling down, I was actually painting my son's face. And it was a great moment. And it was a pretty powerful and special moment. But then something hit me. As I looked around, all of the boys in the class were lined up behind my son because only men could paint men's face or boys' faces. Next to me, on both sides, were women. And there was probably 6 or 7 mothers that were there. But I was the only dad. And to be honest, that pissed me off. I got a little bit angry because I'm going, where are all the dads? And I believe that a lot of dads, especially dads in small business, they kind of mix up their priorities. I was a bit angry at the time, and I was kind of pointing the finger at everybody else. And then I actually realized at any given time, I wouldn't have been there. In fact, if I looked at the previous school year, I hadn't been there once for one of his actual school events because I was too busy, I was out of town, and I had a lot of work that I had to do. I did a little bit of an experiment. I actually talked to some of the fathers afterwards. And I checked in with them and said, just curious, we had this great event. It was a chance to go in. I talked about painting the kids' faces. And it was a really special day. And I asked them, why weren't you there? And of course, they said exactly what I said. They said, well, we were at work. We were too busy. We had too many things going on. And the thing that I asked them next is, well, could you have been there? So for example, could you have actually taken the time ahead of time to actually spend 2 or 3 hours with your son or your daughter? And the interesting thing, every one of them said, yeah, you know what? They could have. And I guess the challenge that I'm finding is we know that we should be doing these things at work and at home, but what's happening is kind of life is getting in the way. We're not getting our priorities straight, and that's what I want to look at. People need to get back on path. In fact, small business owners need to get back on path. I see too many small business owners, they're going around in circles, they're spinning their wheels, but they're actually not getting the traction that they want. Or they may be getting the traction they want in business, but what's going on with the balance in their family life is starting to actually fall behind. So what I want to talk to you about today is how can you actually get back on track? And more importantly, to do that, you need to be aware of the 5 pathways of distraction. I noticed there are 5 things that small business owners actually trip over or fall into and get distracted from what's really important. The first trend is a trend that we see every day. And it's actually the trend around digital overload. Like we are bombarded with information. There is so much information actually hitting us left, right, and center that there's no way that we can keep up. If you think about it, there are over 5,000 books that are actually published every day, right? 5,000 books every day. Now that's globally. If we just look at the English books, that's 3,500 English books that are published in one day. So there's actually no way you can possibly read every book that's published. There's too much information that's hitting us from all sides. The other thing is the digital technology and what it can allow us to do has completely changed. I remember when I actually got one of the first mobile phones or cell phones that I had, similar to the old Nokias. And they were the bee's knees, right? They were indestructible. You could call people. You could send some text messages. In fact, I remember one of the first ones, you could play the game Snake. That was pretty exciting back then. And of course, what did Apple do? They completely flipped this on the head. With the iPhone, what that allows you to do is not just make the calls, but do all of the other things that we are now ingrained to doing. The challenge with that is we now don't have time to actually keep up or do the things that are important. In fact, I actually saw a statistic recently that looked at what's happening with this digital overload. 84% of people that have a smartphone are on their device within 15 minutes of waking up. Right? Now, to be fair, I was thinking about that, and I do the same thing, but my excuse is I use it for my alarm clock, right, to get up in the morning. However, what do I do the minute I turn the alarm off once I wake up? Is I actually check my email at the same time, and then, of course, go on to social media. So these digital overload is actually starting to bombard us. Mentally, most people are having a really hard time. How do I keep up? How do I know what I should be actually reading or not reading? And then you've also got the other things on the social media and the websites. Here's a really interesting one, the Kardashians. Over 45 million people follow what Kim Kardashian is saying and doing, right? And my question is, why? Why are people so kind of tuning out to actually follow somebody that seems to be a little bit famous? She hasn't done anything that has, helped with world peace or medicine or any new technology or helping society. But because she's out there digitally, what's happening is people are getting sucked into it. So it means the time and the headspace that we have to do the things that really matter are being left behind. Which brings me to the second trend. The second trend that I found that's actually starting to happen is this distraction management. Because we are bombarded with so many things in so many different areas, we don't know what to focus on. We don't know what should we be doing. I actually walked into a supermarket the other day. I need to get some milk. And of course, isn't it interesting? They always put the milk at the very back of the shops, right? That's so as you walk all the way through to get the milk, you're gonna grab some of the things on the end of the aisles with those suggestive selling that comes up. But as I was looking at the milk, I noticed something. There were over 79 different varieties of milk. You've got your soy milk, you've got your low-fat milk, you've got your 2%, there's an A2 protein milk, you've got the almond milk, you've got all the soy varieties. So what this means is we are bombarded with so many different choices right now that it's actually slowing down our decision-making. We're not really sure which one should I take. And this is hitting and crippling a lot of small business owners because they're not making the decisions they should because they're a bit overwhelmed with the distraction of choice. The third trend is actually being what I call busy. See, a lot of small business owners believe that they're really busy. And my question is, are you busy doing the things that really matter? Or are you just busy doing things? I remember when I grew up in a smaller town in America. And I remember when I grew up, when my parents were there and I was there growing up, my parents had a bucket list, right? It's kind of the things that you want to do before you die. And I remember when I grew up, my parents really had 3 things on their bucket list. The first one is that they wanted to pay their mortgage off, right? That was one. They wanted to have their own house and pay the mortgage off. The second one is they wanted to be able to take the family on an overseas holiday, like if they could save up. And I remember when they saved up and we went to Hawaii, right? That was the big thing. That was kind of their second thing on their bucket list. And the third thing was to see me as their son actually kind of grow up and get married and have grandkids. I was actually in a shop the other day and I actually noticed a book on the bookshelf that said the 100 things you have to do before you die. And it hit me. I'm going, wait a minute, aren't 3 things good enough anymore? People aren't fulfilled. There's too many choice, too many options. So what used to be has completely changed to what people want now. People are ferocious in looking for new things. But what I'm looking at from a business perspective, it's distracting them. It's taking them off path. A couple of other things that are actually starting to happen is people are not actually being engaged at work like they used to. There's also some other research that's showing when we are in this busyness syndrome, there's actually a part in our brain that actually gets stimulated, very similar to what happens when somebody's addicted. And it's almost like, if you've ever had this happen, you would have had the email, and you had the email, and you had some work to do, but rather than just doing your work, you keep going back in and double-checking your email just to see, is there something else that's there that I should look at? This is this need that we have to have fulfilled just being busy, and it's actually taking us off track. The fourth trend that's actually getting in the way of us being effective from a small business perspective is lack of awareness. What I'm noticing is a lot of times we're not aware of what we should be doing. Just like I wasn't aware. I knew that I should have been spending more quality of time with my son, Luca, but I was too busy with work, and I used that as the excuse. If you start looking at what's happening in business, there was a Gallup poll that was done, and as you can actually see, 70% of workers are not engaged at work. They're going through the motions, but they're not engaged. What does that mean to you? What's the impact if you have a small business and you have some people that don't want to be there? And the fifth trend. The fifth trend is another very, very powerful trend that I actually have noticing, and it's an increase in fear and anxiety. Because people actually can't mentally keep up, because they're bombarded with so much information, so many choices, people's fear and anxiety rate is actually starting to go up. It means they're actually not taking the time to reconnect with what's really important with them and what they should be doing. In fact, the UN actually did a study, and this is a number of years ago. This is back in 2002. They were looking forward on the Western world to take a look at what were going to be the diseases that are going to impact the way the world operates. And what they predicted by the year 2020, which isn't very far away, the number 2 disease is going to be mental health. And essentially, if you read the study, they essentially said people can't keep up. Mentally, they can't process, and they don't have the skills. And I'm starting to see this across areas. I know of friends that are actually stressed out, overloaded. They don't know how to keep up. This mental illness could become a big issue if we don't do something about it. And this brings up the second bit, which is about fear. See, this trend of anxiety is really driven by fear. Fear of the need to stay in front. Fear of the need to stay up with everybody else. And fear of the need of the uncertain. See,
to continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.